We start in the body page and we can see the blue segment nodes and the yellow geometry nodes and orange material nodes, and over here we can see our agent. If we go Alt M, we can see the geometry and texture maps. If we click on the shirt material node, we can see that the texture map has been loaded into the diffuse tab, and that we're referencing a variable called shirt map, which allows us to have some variation. If we click on the background, we can see our list of variables here, and we can see the values of shirt map. Now if we go back to our material node, click on shaders, we've only got a velocity render pass, and we want to be able to render this in Arnold. So let's go to renders and change the renderer for our render pass to Arnold. Now we could actually add another render pass if we wanted to. We can have as many as we like, but we only need one right now, so we'll leave it at that. And we go to our renders, and we've got one render at the moment. It's called default. We'll change the render pass to beauty, which is our Arnold render pass. Now we're all set up ready to do a render if we want to. This process is all the same for RenderMan, V-Ray and Arnold. Now let's see if we can assign a shader. We click on the shader button and up comes the shader dialog, but there's no shader, and that's because we haven't added one. So let's go to the shader page, and it's empty. We can add a shader with the add button. It will add for the currently selected renderer, which is Arnold. If we click add, we now get a list of all of the Arnold shader nodes on the left here, and so we can start building our shader. Let's start with standard surface. The first node we bring on also gets an output node, which we don't need to worry about right now, except we need to connect to it. So we go control click to connect to surface, and this just tells Massive that this is the output of our shader network. Now let's get an image node so that we can specify a texture map, and again we can connect that with control click to base color. If we want to, we can hover over control hover, and we'll open up this parameter because it's got components, in this case RGB and A, but right now we don't need to do that. If we go back to standard surface, we probably don't want specular on for our agents, and we can drag that. If we have modified one of these parameters, it will have a light gray background. If we don't want to modify it, we can shift click on it to get back to the default value. Now we could, in our image node, just set the file name here, but if we did that, we would have the same texture map for every material node that uses this shader, and we have several material nodes on this guy, and we want different texture maps on each one. So rather than set the file name in the actual shader, what we do is bring on an input node and connect that to file name, and let's call it text map. And let's bring on another input node and connect that to specular. Now let's go back to the body page and our material node. Now if we assign a shader, we see that shader 1 is right there with text map and specular. So let's switch off specular and let's find a texture map. We'll get shirt and then replace the 1 with the variable name. And let's do the same for jeans. This time we'll use a variable called jeans map. and again set the specular to 0. Now if we have a look at our agent in Arnold, we'll see that we do actually have the texture maps assigned. And so that's pretty good, but let's see what else we can do. If we go back to the shader page, we could continue adding inputs to our shader network here, but that can be done for us. All we have to do is click on Add Default Shaders, and we get useful shaders for all supported renderers. Here's the Arnold one, so we've got a lot more parameters now, and let's try using that. So back to the body page, shirt, here we go. Instead of shader 1, let's use standard. Now we'll set the color again. And make sure KS is 0, in this case it defaults to 0, and let's use the bump map. Where is it? There we go, shirt bump. Set the bump height to say 5, and do the same for jeans. Bump map, bump height, and now let's see how it looks. Okay, now we've got the texture maps and the bump maps, and we've used custom shaders that we set up in the shader page.